So James, we met in Dublin when was the past weekend actually, right? And
Yeah.
you were on tour with other three singer-songwriters. I remember we had a couple in which they were singing country songs. And then the organizer of the gigs, which is also songwriter, and yourself, and we bumped into each other randomly because of a friend we have in common, which I believe is Jimmy, right?
Yes.
And Jim is a massive fan of Bruce Springsteen and
Yeah.
is a longtime friend of Jack from Bone Machine, the Tom Waits tribute band from Ireland. So
Yeah.
we started to talk about a little bit about everything about anything music related. And I didn't know anything about what you were doing. I didn't even know that you are a songwriter.
Mm.
So the first thing, and I was really impressed by your songs. I went online and I checked your albums, both the most recent one, but also the previous ones. And I really like your songwriting
Thank
and
you.
the lyrics. And it's classic songwriting, which is something that is kind of like missing nowadays. That a lot of people focus more about production, and sound.
Mm.
But
So,
I would like to know, we didn't manage, this is going to be, a conversation, but we didn't manage about your origins and how did it start, if you have always been a songwriter or if you started in a different field in art or as a session player. So
mm.
I'm going to let you talk about this because I would actually like to know more about the early years.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Currently in Leicester. I live in Brooklyn. I've been in New York for 20 years, but I'm in Leicester right now, which is where my family are from and where I'm from. And I for the first 20 years of my life, I lived in Leicester. And I began by playing the guitar and the ukulele as a young kid, and then played in bands at school and did cover bands and did all that stuff when I was like 14, 15. And it just seemed a natural thing to try to write songs because all of my, I was listening to songwriters, whether it's Dylan or Neil Young or Randy Newman, all those kind of American, John Martin. And just seemed like a natural thing for me to try to write songs because I kind of understood the process a little bit. You strummed a few chords and you wrote some words down and then you sang them. So I thought, okay, I can probably do that. Thankfully, none of those songs really, they're not really around anymore because they were pretty terrible. But I began here in Leicester and playing in bands and songs, writing songs. And then I moved to London when I was like 21, 22. Had a bunch of record deals and things like that, and played all around London and kept writing and kept kind of making a living. I had a few record deals on Stiff Records. I had a record deal on Polydor Records and a publishing deal. Nothing really came of anything. And then I did that for like 20 years in London. And then I moved to for some reason, I moved to New York about 20 years ago. And I've been able to kind of turn it into making a decent living out in the New York area, playing and writing songs. So that's briefly what my trajectory was. I don't think I wrote a decent song. Started writing songs when I was about 14 or 15, but I really don't think I wrote a decent song till I was in my early 30s. It took me a long while to, I don't know, get past that part of my writing abilities where I think, looking back, I think most of the songs I wrote before my early 30s were pretty terrible. And I just kind of turned a corner when I was in my early 30s and started writing songs I can actually stand behind and think actually pretty good. So that's about it.
Takes time. Yeah, yeah. But so 20 years ago, that was the time of Mercury Lounge, right? That was the time when Lower East Side was happening. I mean, that would be pretty much around the time actually when I was there, when I was in New York, and I remember. I think we're talking about this, Arlene's Grocery, pianos, Rockwood Hall, all these different great venues. Um,
The living room, you remember that?
the living room, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And there was, I think that there was something like that. Like that period was there were a lot of bands. That's what I remember. It was a bit weird because it was a transition between the MySpace phase where there were people booking bands just because they had a lot of people on MySpace. And then it was going into the Facebook period. And then, which is, far before the Spotify age, which we're living in. I'm just talking about numbers because obviously, the revenue has gone down actually in the past 20 years in general for content creators. But yeah, I know that maybe a parallel because I haven't been really in touch with in my case, with the Brooklyn and Lower East Side scene since 2008, 2009. And when I moved to Europe, when I moved to Ireland, for about 10 years, I used to do the sound for bands and also DJ at a regular open mic night in Dublin, which originally was in a venue called The Village and then at the Mercantile. And I noticed that things were going through phases, right? So we had a phase of like indie bands and then acoustic singer-songwriters. Do you think that New York went through that phase? Because I'm sure you played a lot of different venues, probably throughout the whole New York State, maybe also in New Jersey. Do you think that went through a phase where there was more songwriters and then you had another phase with more bands? Or the songwriter scene, the songwriter community has been always consistent throughout the years, at least in the New York State? What is your opinion about it?
I honestly think if I think about when I first moved to New York 20 years ago, there was so many open mics and there were a bunch of places where you would go down there could be 30, 40 people trying to get a spot to sing songs in an open mic. That is completely gone. I don't see any of that at all for the last 10 years. It's definitely disappeared. I think that's indicative of a few things, but I think it's indicative of the housing crisis in New York, the fact that artists simply can't afford to live in New York anymore. COVID's obviously had an effect. I was a part of the kind of Rockwood scene that was very, very active in the mid 2000s, and lots of bands, lots of songwriters were playing in that terrific venue. That's now pretty much gone. I think that the fact that people are now working, they're not coming into the city to work as much as they used to. That's had an effect on the whole singer-songwriter, the landscape of singer-songwriting in New York. I think the internet has had an effect. Spotify, Facebook, all of these things have come together and pretty much destroyed, I think, the kind of singer-songwriter community that was in New York when I first moved there. That's not to say there aren't singer-songwriters playing and doing great work in New York, because there are, but that scene has gone. It's definitely, I've not seen anything like what it used to be when I first moved to New York. I was stunned by how many my open mics were running and how many people were turning up to attend them. And that I don't see any open mics now. And whether that's an indicator of the state of the scene, which I think it probably is. It was grassroots, understand. It was very small, it wasn't big time. It wasn't Taylor Swift. It was just people trying to write songs and play music in New York City. And that's really definitely gone.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's like throughout COVID, we definitely saw a change in the music scene. What I think really happened is that we were kind of already set up for a phase shift in the good or in the bad, obviously, because for society, changed, and we've seen that the way people discover music or the way that people even interact in outdoors, indoors, at events, festivals, or nights, definitely has been affected by technology. But it's also true, in my opinion, because I was visiting in New York right after the first COVID break. It was a Christmas time. It was a bit hectic because I remember there was a shortage of places where you can do a test. and also vaccines. And I remember that in general, I was interacting with some of my friends in the art scene, in not just music, like visual arts, etc. And they were all saying that somehow the audience itself changed, and it got more and more detached from being, present, being active while attending a concert or going to an art exhibition. And we all know this, obviously, that we're more on the phone, and more people are giving a lot more importance to, the online world, which for people of my generation or your generation, we are more interested in the physical world, in something, we can touch and feel. But at the same time, we're living on the same timeline of people that never experienced that. Just thinking about somebody that is 20 years old now, or was born after the year 2000, and they never experienced the good and the bad of being, say, in an overcrowded concert, or have to make an physical effort to go and look for a record, or wait for a friend to tell you, you should listen to this artist, to this band. Nowadays, we rely on technology for everything, algorithms, and so forth. And it's interesting to me, and I would like to have your opinion about this, to notice that somehow the current situation, which is probably one of the most challenging for content creators in general, because on one side we have technology, which is an amazing tool. We can talk with anybody around the world. We can make music, make videos a lot cheaper than what it used to be. But at the same time, because of that, when we reach the audience, the audience somehow has missed that value that they used to give to, sitting and listening to an album, or supporting an artist because they were really paying attention to the lyrics, or they were really interested in what they're doing. So do you think that, because you recently did gigs in Europe, I believe you've been also to Italy, obviously to Ireland, for sure very well UK, and then United States. So do you think that we're seeing this trend consistently, at least throughout two continents? Or do you think that like US is a little bit better than Europe, or the other way around, as far as audience?
I don't know. That's a very difficult question to answer, because my level of fame, if you like, I'm always playing to a small room, maybe 50, 100, 200 people. And I'm very grateful that people come and see me play. I'm still at that kind of level of popularity. So I find it very difficult to get out of that place, to build my audience from, say, 200 to 1,000. Getting to that point where I can get 500, 600 people in a room is very, very difficult. It used to be the case that you would have a label, and they would help you, through media, through magazines and television. You would get access to a greater audience. But with, in the absence of that, and the absence of a benefactor, I'm really struggling to try to get beyond my immediate audience. And the way I do that, I hope, is by being able to write songs and perform and play songs in a way that people like, actually at the gig, and they will tell their friends and hopefully buy the records, and just by word of mouth, which has always been the best way to try to build an audience. People, you see something and you like it, and you tell your friends. But I did have this thought the other day that I'll share with you, which is that when I was growing up as a kid, it was a big deal to buy a record. It took all of your money, all of your pocket money, the money that you might earn over the weekend doing a Saturday job, and you would take that money and you would spend most of it on a record. So that really meant you was invested heavily in that product and that artist, because it took a lot of your energy, your time, to be able to buy that record. So I remember once buying a record that I didn't like, and it broke my heart that I didn't like it, because I thought I'd spent all this money that I'd worked really hard for. And I bought this record and I hated it. And I was really, very, really upset. And I tried to take it back and whatever, and I couldn't get my money back. But that made me think about how, when we were listening to records, we were obsessed with the record. We had the record. We looked at the artist. We looked at where they recorded it. We looked who was the engineer, who was the bass player, who wrote the song. We were fascinated by all of this information surrounding the artist. And we were really into the artist, whoever they were. And I just don't see any of that anymore. You can just Spotify everything. Doesn't cost you anything to listen to music.
Yeah. Well, look, like James, like you reminded me when I was 17, I just finished to do my studies at the conservatory for classical music, and I was just a high school kid. And I remember I was saving every single, at the time we didn't even have euros. I grew up in Italy, so it was the lira. So 1 lira was like 10 cents, of euro nowadays. And I was a massive Frank Zappa fan. Still is. I love Frank Zappa. I don't listen to Frank Zappa every single day, like the way I used to. And Zappa had this massive discography of more than 55 records, right? If you go and include also live recordings and stuff like that. So Zappa was to me the entry point to several other musicians later on, like Steve Vai, Vinny Colaiuta, and so forth. So for me, it was like the go-to where I could listen to different genres, in a time where everybody was consuming mainly music cassettes. So this is the mid-90s, and of course CDs, right? Vinyl records, they were more the domain of the classical music guys, the jazz guys, and so forth. Sorry, this is my dog.
Oh,
Okay. And so what happened is that to me it was a big deal to be able to buy most of Frank Zappa records by the age of 18. So it took me like about a year, and this on CD. And then I had, my cassettes collection. But my mother was a classical piano player and a teacher at the conservatory, so she was buying a lot of music. Not really. She was going up to, Pink Floyd, Queen. That's it, then, I had, some of my friends, they were listening to the more contemporary stuff, like, the 90s, like bands like Oasis, but also some other guys were listening to Metallica. In Italy, everything was arriving with a delay. So definitely for me, it was a big effort to be able to say no to go out, and party, and have drinks with my friends. Just, in Italy, like summer was a big deal, like you were really spending a lot of money, almost all your money. And my money were coming from gigs. I was playing gigs since I was 16 in cover bands and tribute bands. So, yeah, that process is gone. But to me, it's also a reminder of one thing, and it's the same thing for the audience, is that in the 90s, up to the early 2000s, okay, you had the dedicated audience, so the active listeners, the ones that they're actually saying, okay, I'm going to listen to, this guy, and I'm going to look purposely, on, and, just go there and have, like time, dedicated time to look for music. And as you said, study the credits and all that kind of stuff. Now, what is happening now is that because music is so widely available, music is everywhere. It's constantly being pushed to us, and it's most of the time the perception is that it's for free. It's for free as in not being free as in freedom, but being free as in no monetary value. Because you have this perception that by paying a subscription you can have a choice of infinite music, which is not true, but you have this illusion of infinite choice, right? Because of that, it really opened the doors to all the people that in the 90s, they were not even bothered about buying a CD. They were waiting for, the illegal compilation to be, available from their friends. And they were relying on that, but they were not buying an album. They knew one song because that song was in a compilation, right? The classic, the mixtapes, the CD compilation, burned on a $1 CD, So all that kind of stuff, right? It was part of the majority of the audience, which they were the so-called passive audience. The guys that they knew only one song of one artist, two songs, maybe if it was two or three songs, was a massive artist. Nowadays, we have the other side of the coin. So that audience, which at the time, it was not the audience allowing the music industry to exist, okay? The music industry was relying on the audience like buying records. They wanted you to buy records. They wanted you to buy merchandise, to go at the concerts, to build an artist, to invest in talent. Nowadays, the music industry is relying on the same type of audience that was exchanging illegal mixtapes in the 90s. Funny enough, it's the same level. So when people go on Spotify and they see an artist with 1 million streams, 1 million monthly listeners, how many of these people do really know the artist? Most of them, they're actually coming from random playlists. So it's mathematical, as we both know, that the majority of those people, they're not going to buy a ticket. They're not going to show up at gigs. They're that, audience, that passive audience that they never really cared about music in the first place.
Yeah.
So that's the reality. But you touched the topic, which is very extremely relevant nowadays. And it's like, well, we are in a situation where the music industry, the structure, it's practically gone. Okay. And we don't, we're not allowed anymore to, rely, let's say, on a record label, or unless we have maybe an investor, on investment coming from non-musical avenues, right? So like, for example, a company that says, hey, I'm going to invest you because you are, I don't know, a celebrity, an actor, or we think you can influence a lot of young people or people of any age. So what is happening now is that somehow it's harder to break through, even we have more platforms to access music. We have more venues, more venues that they're like, oh, I want to have live music because it's cool, especially now after COVID. There's more and more venues that they want to get the people in, and the people, they do want to party because they've been stuck in at home for like almost 2 years, at least, in Europe and North America. So what happened is that an artist is struggling to do the most essential thing, to know where is the right audience that could potentially care about what he or she is doing musically. So how do we reach those people? How do we reach that potential audience? On one side, we know that we have to deal with the infamous, algorithm, or the suggestion system. And on the other side, it's like, we need to be productive and post as much as possible on social media, all that. The problem is that most of the times, as you said before, it's the equivalent of playing the lottery. It's like I'm gonna hope that I'm gonna win this 1 in a million ticket, and somehow the right post, the right song is gonna be shown to the right people, and they'll like it. Okay, but that's a game that it might never work. We might be waiting for that for like 10 years, right? For 20 years. And we don't have time for that, because in the meantime, we want to be able to, to opt and say, I want to focus on my creativity. I want to focus on what I am supposed to be, myself, being an artist. I don't want to stay, in front of a smartphone or a computer and, keep producing and stuff like that. We talked about, when we met, actually, we talked about the difference between creating content and documenting, but still that requires a mindset that, the majority of creative people don't have, and they're not required to have. I mean, that's the reality, for example, I'm an example of that. Like, I've been around since the late 90s, and I traveled extensively, 3 different continents. I toured and stuff like that. I never had the mindset of saying I should do a video or take photos of the gigs. And in the recent years, actually slightly, before COVID, more and more people were pointing to me that if you don't do anything, you're gonna end up with you don't exist. It's like this paradox, right? Because I know I exist. I mean, like, like I know people in the real world, especially from traveling, but at the same time, it's quite interesting to like I had to find a meaning in what I do online, which is like, okay, I'm gonna always have a camera set up right there. So if I'm recording, material from my album, I just need to click recording and it's gonna record. And then later on, I'll edit, Well, now we have AI stuff that can help you edit and chop stuff. But I don't want to think about it, I don't want to like waste like an hour or 2 hours every day setting up a light. And meanwhile, I might lose the idea, it's counterproductive. It doesn't work. So for me, in my opinion, and then I want to know your point of view on this, is that um, technology has been basically, it's not just influencing, society in general, including the content creators, but it's also been going so fast. It's been this exponential growth that everybody's trying to chase, but nobody really knows what to do. Okay. So definitely coming back to what you said, the real world is what will always stay here. It will go through phases. Maybe like in 5 or 6 years, there will be a renaissance of music with content. Like actual, like maybe a new Bob Dylan, a new storyteller in general, a new wave of storytellers. Less about the appearance, less about the production, and more about the content. But it doesn't really matter, like as far as, the audience, because it's, you could be performing for 50 people, you could be performing for 10,000 people. We're not talking about popularity, but we're talking about the experience in the present time as a songwriter, as a musician. And in your opinion, do you think that do you see with the people that you met, okay? I'm sure you met some people that are more, technological and more up to the times, and other people that they're like maybe completely against it, and they're like, oh no, I want to keep doing whatever I want to do, kind of like a Neil Young approach, right? When Neil Young is like, I'm gonna have my own platform, I'm gonna finance this platform where you can download the music at a really amazing quality, and he says like, I want to do this, or I want to take out my music, from like certain platforms, certain online stores. More or less with the people that you met, because no matter of the size of the gig, you've been traveling, so you've been meeting people from different cultures and very diverse backgrounds. Do you think that people are mostly struggling with this, adapting to the online world, or they're just like embracing it, but still quite not understanding what to do? Based on your experience, what you have seen?
I think that a lot of people, obviously, there are two camps. You've got people who are very obsessed with it and use it constantly, like the tour I was just on with Williams Honor, Reagan, the singer. She was so on the phone, editing, filming, documenting the whole tour. And that's one side of it. Whereas I took a few videos and took a few photographs, and I just can't be bothered with that. I will never be. That will never be me. I'll be more in the Neil Young camp, I'm afraid. I always. I mean, you can do both if you can. I mean, they're brilliant at that. Reagan's brilliant on the phone. She can edit and she can film, and it's fantastic. And I'm really, really envious of that passion to do that. I just haven't got that in me to do that. Maybe it's because I'm too old. I just don't. I will always be the guy that will just try and write songs and try and record them as best as I can, and try and sing them and play them as best as I can, and hope that is connecting to people, as at the gig, and hopefully and they listen to the record as well. That's all I'm ever going to do. I'll do the online thing, and I'll do as much as I can be bothered to do, and I'm all in favor of it. But I just don't have I don't have that drive, if you like, to compete online with people. I just can't be bothered to do it. It's just not going to be of any of. I'd love it to be. If I did it, I'd love it. It'd be great if it was successful. If I did it, I'm not going to do it. I mean, I do videos and I do it as much as I can. But the main focus of what I do is always just going to be about playing, writing, and performing. It's never going to be about the online thing. I mean, that's to my detriment. I'm sure that is not a good thing for me as an artist to do that. And if someone comes along and wants to help me put it all together, I'll be very grateful. But I just can't be, I just won't be that person. Just can't be bothered.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, like one thing that I noticed is that this is just a social repercussion, basically, of like what the online world, just like what pretty much mass media used to do, like in the 90s with TV and radio, where they were saying, if you don't do this way, you're not going to be part of this exclusive club, of this audience. But what I noticed is that, so first of all, definitely every artist is a different world. So for sure, like there's no a unique way of doing things, and it should be respected. Even some people, they're like, oh, if you don't do this, nothing is going to happen. The reality is that certain things work for certain people and certain situations. And when it comes to technology, it can be applied to anything, right? I mean, there could be a business that does like crafts, and frames for paintings, and they have an amazing customer base somewhere in the middle of like England, and they have like this very old school website, and they have like 10 likes on Facebook, but they don't really need to be famous online because their business is based on real customers, but they rely on them. They have a constant flow of people looking for them because they make maybe a particular type of frame. So when it comes down to music, what I've noticed is that, yes, definitely there is a general assumption from the audience that artists should be on social media, no matter what, like as far as, numbers, like having more or less numbers, but it's kind of like expected that you should be accessible. That's the right word. Like when people say, oh, your music should be everywhere. So if you find the Amazon Music guy or the Spotify guy, they'll go and they know that you are there because maybe they're already paying a subscription or whatever, and they get pissed, because they're like, oh, why your music is only on Amazon? I'm on Spotify, all this kind of stuff, right? Which is the same for movies. Like when people think about movies, they're going to think about Netflix. They're going to think about Amazon Prime. They don't think
Yeah.
anymore about like, oh, I'm going to go to the movie theater, They
Yeah.
think about, is your movie on Netflix, So
You can't
go ahead.
ignore the online thing, and I don't. I'm not. I do have Spotify, Facebook, Instagram. I have a website. I'm not entirely off the grid. I'm very much. I try to be on it as much as I can, but how far down that wormhole I personally am prepared to go is somewhat limited, I suppose. But carry on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. But I mean, you bring up a very important point. A very important point is that actually nowadays, because anybody can do that, right? So there's nothing
Yeah.
unique about,
Yeah.
being able to document your day, right? It could be,
Yeah.
you could think it's interesting or less interesting. What I think is really missing is that people don't really know what to do with it. So you have all this footage, you have all these videos, all these photos and stuff like that. What are you going to do? You're going to put it just randomly on social media? Because what you're doing in the end is what people were doing on Facebook like 6 years ago, on MySpace before then. And even before then, it's like people that they were going on vacation like in the early 2000s, and they were taking with them one of those point and shoot cameras, like the very early ones, the digital ones. And they were, after they took a holiday, they were meeting with their friends, and they're like, oh, look, I took 1,000 photos. And the other guy would be like, why the hell you took 1,000 photos? Like, what's the point? You could, did you spend any time with your family, really? Or were you just like taking photos? So the point is that to me, with social media is happening the same thing. So in social media is that when it comes down to, people that they're saying at least that they're building a status or a career online, to the eyes of somebody that is like probably 6 or 8 hours a day on social media, like the general, Instagram user or the general TikTok user, Obviously, if you're 14, you're going to spend more time because you have more time. If you are, 24, 30 years old or more, you're not going to spend much time on social media because you got a life to live, right? So that's the different approach. But no matter how much time you spend online, when you go to the page of an artist, there is a general assumption, not actually about the content, but how the content is organized. That's one thing that I noticed, throughout the last 3 years, working with very different types of record labels, from electronic music to hip hop to jazz. They all have this thing in common, right? It's that they do have artists that they are very obsessed with social media, and they have artists that they don't care, but they do have somebody that goes around and, a videographer, and takes photos and videos of the gigs. They're both on the same at the same level, because in the end, when you have all this content, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to make sure that that content is telling it has a narrative, is telling a
I know,
story?
but there's such a narcissism about the whole thing, is there not? Why do you think you are interesting? I
Definitely. Yeah.
don't think you are. I don't care. I don't give a fuck what you're doing about your life and where you're going and who you're talking to and what you're doing and your new outfit and your I don't care about that. I could give a flying fuck about those people and what they're doing. I like music. I like listening to music. I like great songs. I like great songwriters. And if I want to see something exciting on the internet or something, I'll go and watch a movie. I don't care about people's lives, and I think it's a very not, it's a kind of a curse of our age, the narcissism that people film themselves doing the most inane things in some kind of attempt to validate their life, to justify their life, to think that they are valuable members of society because they have got 10,000 followers or a million likes on their page. It's pathetic, man. I'm just not
It's true.
in
It's
that
true.
world.
Like, that's the same way that we think, but the problem is that we need an audience. And
Yes.
but and the interesting thing is that if you have a very strong opinion, which you do, okay, you're also going to find your audience. So, for
Right.
example, I don't care about who listens to my music. For example, if it is somebody that is into, like, I don't know, going out and, drinking a bunch of beers and watching the NBA, game or stuff like that, or if it's somebody who is more like an intellectual, right? But for sure, like, I know that I will be I will identify more in somebody that comes to me and says, I like your music, if that person is more similar to me. Definitely. The problem is that when you're playing for people that most of the times have no music background. They have no clue of how to put together a song. They never distributed a song in their life. They don't live the life that we live. So that's for sure. Okay. That's for any genre, any genre, any art form, like painting or sculpturing, anything, right? So we create something and we put it out there, and then to an audience that doesn't know what they want. Most of the times they have no clue what they want. Okay. We put it out there, and especially the mainstream audience, the ones that they used to get the mixtapes in the 90s, the same guys. They have no clue what they want. They just say, oh, this year is the year of, like, indie rock. Okay, let's listen to indie rock playlist, right?
Mm.
This year is the year of, like, dubstep. Let's go on Spotify and look for the dubstep playlist, not for the dubstep artist, the dubstep playlist. So
Right.
so what happens is that it is an extremely cynical and egocentrical framework, because that's what society is now. It's the
Mm-hmm.
cult of loneliness, of being lonely together, basically,
Mm.
outside, or just lonely, indoors in
Mm-hmm.
their own world. And so therefore, what they're going to do is they're going to create, the audience at large will create a cult of the ego. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what we're witnessing. So
Right.
for us, it's extremely alienating, because
Mm.
obviously we're like, like I don't see any utility in a social media feed, because why should I know about what that person is doing unless I'm honestly interested in knowing what the person is doing, right? So if you put it out in the first place, as on a personal level, obviously, to me, it's superficial. It's an unnecessary, right? Unless you're in that circle where they're playing that game, which is kind of like a high school thing, right? It's the same things like from what most of the people experience in high school, like who's the most popular person in the class, who is the smartest guy in the school, it's the same thing repeated. But that's always been like that. That's society. That's society in the Western world is structured that way. And it never really gets out of that framework. Social media just made it more clear. It just really
Mm.
just give literally a platform for that. And
Mm.
obviously, because they make money, for advertising and stuff, they love it. So they're like, let's give more, to society. So society can feed more the ego, of this like lonely crowd. That's what we're seeing. The problem is that in a lonely crowd, it's quite difficult to understand where are the real potential supporters. So as artists, we need audience. We need an audience, small, big, whatever it is. Well, we need an audience, because otherwise we'll be playing only for ourselves, which is cool, okay. But if we're playing for ourselves, then there's no need to make an album or to make a record or to do a
Yes, no.
gig. So when we're playing, when we're manifesting, when we're expressing ourselves, I truly believe that we're doing it for ourselves, and we should do it for ourselves. We shouldn't be doing that to make somebody else happy,
Yeah,
because we're not providing a service unless we're playing in a cover band or a tribute band. That's the
right.
or a wedding band. That's the reality. That's the way it is.
Yeah,
So if
that's
you're
right.
doing original music and you're creating something, the first person to be happy should be you or the
Yes.
band you're playing with.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Then whatever happens after that, it should be an honest interest from outside,
Yeah.
which most of the times it doesn't come because of necessarily the music. It comes for other non-musical things. Like you might have a band and people love the band because they see the friendship between the members. It's true.
Okay.
Like that's how people relate to, feelings. They don't know chords or production, anything like that. But
Yeah.
the problem is that nowadays the way that people communicate has shifted, and is shifting, is moving more and more towards a non-organic form. So from like the people talking in a
Hmm.
venue, or the people spontaneously joining a club because maybe they have a common interest in whatever it is, whiskey, cigars, like they have an interest that they go and they talk about a topic. And while they're talking about a topic, they're like, oh, you do this. Oh, I do this, that too. And they start to talk. And then, but what music you listen to? Oh, I listen to this music. So that's an organic, way of knowing about something, knowing about music. But nowadays, more and more is moving into a non-personal, and I would say like almost, I would say disjointed, but definitely detached way of knowing about stuff in general. Started with the media, people going, Twitter and, the news and stuff like that. And more it moved digital. And nowadays, you go on Google, you go online, and everybody has an opinion, and you look and say, how do I validate that opinion? Oh, it's because it's on that website. It's because that opinion has like 1 million likes, therefore it should be good, or a review. Like nowadays, people don't go to a restaurant if they don't read the review online. They don't go. They
Hmm.
don't even go to see gigs sometimes because they have to look for the review, right? But the
Hmm.
review is somebody else's opinion, and who is that person to tell you what you should be eating or what you should be listening to? So in this scenario, so this massive, complex and kind of like stuck scenario, right? We have the artist putting out music and saying, I'm trying to document as much as possible what I do. I'm trying to put out content, social media, all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, there is also an algorithm which is filtering whatever comes out, right? An algorithm that doesn't care about content, but cares about the platform because it's a company. It's a third-party content application. So they don't know you. They don't care about you. It's a company that is pushing out content to make their own interest. So in this situation, it's kind of like you are going out to do gigs and you're building your fan base organically, but it's kind of like also limited by the fact that gigs can't be that big because unless you go and open for a massive act or you do a lot of festivals, you can get literally stuck in a loop of small gigs. I've seen so many bands doing this. Some bands they do well because if you get stuck in doing gigs in Tokyo, in Japan, where there's like 400 music venues, you can tour in Japan for a year. But depends where you are. Like it's very there's so many different variables, right? But to come back to your point, definitely society is cynical and egocentric. The trick, in my opinion, is to be able to say, to have the same approach of music, like, hey, my music is out there, is on Spotify, is on iTunes, whatever you want to listen to. Thank you for listening to that. It's accessible everywhere, okay? Taking in account that it's very difficult that I'm gonna make like any decent money, it's just like a promotional tool, like it's just out there. And the social media, in my opinion, is the same thing. It's a place like the only way that I was personally able to say, okay, I need to have a schedule about organize my content. The only motivation that I had is that I literally like so many years of my life, which are documented, maybe like certain years, more or less, photos or videos of other people. Actually, they're there in the end, I don't have anything of personal. Like, I mean, I have little things. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to document this and I'm going to make a purpose for me. Okay. So I don't care if my videos are going to get 2 views or 4 views. What I care is that I want to create a time machine for myself to know more about me and more about what I see. It's kind of like a therapy in the end, doing all these different videos and stuff and documenting. I was at the Grammys this year, for example, as a voting member. Most of the videos and photos that are out there are from other people, but they say, no, nice to meet you, Julie, blah, 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 etc. This memory. This year, I'm gonna have somebody, with me also doing the videos and stuff like that because I don't want to lose touch with reality because I'm not a camera person, like I can't be staying across the front of the camera. I'm not an influencer, I'm not a YouTuber. So, but at the same time, I want to make sure that when it's going to be 2038, I will be able to put together all the different dots that happen in the past 10 years, which is the 10 years podcast project, basically, which is a video podcast. That's because it's a bit of everything. And say, okay, I am the person that I am right now. Yes, because I did this life, but also because they did this and that. And then if somebody comes to me, and say like, hey, Julio, what did you do like in whatever, 2026? Okay. I wouldn't be able to remember everything I did in 2026, but I would be able to say maybe it's laziness, but I would be say, hey, go look to my, episode, whatever, on YouTube, and it's in there.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it. Okay, because if I will see social media as in like I need to build followers, I need to prove to somebody that I have numbers, to me it would be super boring. Because it's like, what's the point? Like, I mean, I could use that time, to make music, spend time with my family. I could have been doing so much other stuff more valuable in general, that not as me musician, but as me as a human being.
So you're making a diary.
It's kind of like a diary. Yeah, it could be seen in so many different ways. Yeah, yeah. I used to keep a diary too, writing actually a diary and then on the computer. But then it was something like, see, the difference is that when I'm doing the videos, I'm just clicking record, right? And then whatever happens, happens, take, photo. When you're writing a diary, you need to say, okay, now I'm going to take 1 hour of the day, 30 minutes of the day, and I'm going to sit down there. And if you get a call, you're like, oh, just break the flow. I forgot. I need, I need to put this thing I did this morning at 10 a.m. It's kind of like more, yeah, it's kind of like a journey, kind of like a building a virtual time capsule, something that contains that.
That's lovely.
That's why I started, to do more videos. Not that I used not to do videos, but I was much into it, and not that I'm much into it, not still. In fact, I'm not crazy. Yeah, there's no editing in what I do, pretty much. I mean, actually, now I have AI doing the editing, like, cutting
Really?
the stuff. Yeah, AI, you can add, the captions. I wouldn't have ever had the patience of staying there and add manually the captions. It's crazy. It's like hours or a day, of editing. So that's partially also why I started to do it now, because now I am like, okay, I just need literally to click record, click the button, and whatever happens. If it is a conversation like the one we're having, or if I'm in a studio, like at the beginning of January, I'm gonna be recording a lot of music just in the first week, and I'm just gonna have, like, I have an iPhone and a very good camera, have the lights there, and I'm gonna leave them there for a week, the way they're set up, and I'm just gonna click record, and they're gonna be recording, and I'm gonna do my thing, and just focus on recording the album and stuff like that, and then after, like the week later, I'll put the video, the footage, inside this AI stuff, which is going to edit and things, give a little bit of editing, but I'm not going to give more than an hour, to do editing, because I'm not an editor, I don't do that, like, so that's
An
my
AI,
approach.
an AI will do that, will it?
Yeah, so there's a few apps, but actually also some of them are free too. So for video editing, so what I do is that I use a video editing software, where I put the AI, which is called DaVinci. It's a video editing, very simple. It can do so many different things, but I only do very simple things. Like just have the software to chop, for the Instagram, or it's the same. The stuff that I do, it's repurposed. And I don't do different content for platforms. The same content throughout the. Now I'm focusing on so Instagram and Facebook. It's basically copy and pasted. It's the same thing. And I use Meta Business, which is free. It's inside Facebook. You link your Instagram. You can schedule whatever you want, and it's gonna schedule for you at the best time that the technology think it is, both on Instagram and Facebook. So I do that once a month for the whole month, and it takes me like an hour and a half, and I have the whole month done for Instagram and Facebook. So I know that whatever happens, if one day I'm not gonna be on the phone, I'm gonna be traveling, I don't have any interest in doing videos or whatever, whatever I created in the previous month or months is gonna be put it out. So when the audience see what I do, and I don't know who is the audience, they'll think, oh, he's active, he's existing because he's posting every day. That's the general assumption. Okay, I say, okay, cool. Boy, and then for the video stuff, I use mainly two apps or softwares. One is called Opus Clips. And what Opus Clips does is that for example, this video, what I'm going to do is that just as it is, I'm gonna upload it on private on YouTube, and then I'm gonna take the link on YouTube and go to Opus Clips, which is free. You just join with your Gmail, and you're gonna give the link. And what it's going to do is that the AI is gonna listen to all the conversation that we have, focused based on the keywords. So say, for example, right now we're talking about AI tools, and we're talking about Opus Clips. So Opus Clips will find that we repeated the word Opus Clips many times. Okay, I repeat it. It will isolate the segment. Okay, chop the frame to be in the format of of the phone, like the story, and add the subtitles, which are 99% perfect. If you want to edit, you can edit, and it will create like 5 or 6 different clips for this. I'm doing nothing. The AI is doing nothing. You got the email. It takes a few hours because it's free. It's not like super fast, but it's very good. It's top of the quality. Maybe they're gonna start to add the subscription like sometime soon, but for now it's free. And I take those and I put into Meta Business, and in Meta Business they're gonna be scheduled. See what I mean? Like it's very organic. And the entire clip, this one, which is gonna be one episode of the vlog. There is another app which is called Recut. So Recut is inside DaVinci, and what it does is that it cuts all the silences. Like of there is something, there's too much silence. It puts the timestamps by topic. So again, like now it's probably Now it's going to be called either OAI or Opus Clips or Recut, because we're talking about Recut. And it's going to export that to your YouTube. So you link your YouTube channel to DaVinci with the Recut. Just up that, wait, you click on it, you go do something else, you go back, it's all perfectly, cut it. And then you say upload to YouTube, and it's going to upload with all the timestamps in the description. You have to do nothing. Then
Wow.
I went one step further and I used another app, which is called Pod Squeeze. And Pod Squeeze will transcribe whatever we said and act the punctuation, fix a little bit the grammar here and there without changing anything. And then it's going to spit out literally 3 different summaries. One 100 words long, one 300 words, and one is the full transcript of what we said. So just copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste, and you have your content done. So
Amazing.
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do this in 2020 because and I've seen people doing it. You would have to at least 4 or 5 days just to edit, stuff and cut and captions. If your purpose is to be a YouTuber, yes, but my purpose is to use YouTube, for this. So I'm not working for the YouTube channel, and my main project is not the YouTube channel. So I want to keep being free to live my life, basically. So instead of like having to rely, I didn't schedule that, what the post is coming out, and then I just let it go, and I don't obsess, about how many people like that, how many shares. I just let it go, right? The only thing I care is that if somebody writes me. So, and this is a good thing about meta business, because meta business, if somebody writes you on Facebook or on Instagram, you don't need to have Instagram app. You don't need to have the Facebook app. You have one app, and there you get your messages. I didn't link WhatsApp, but you could also link WhatsApp if you want, because I don't want to give my phone number. But if you do all this instead of having like these apps, everything is in one place, and you can communicate in the DMs, Yeah. So because I know, for example, that what's going to happen is that when I'm going to be in the 2 weeks, when I'm going to be in LA for the Grammys, I have a lot of meetings with musicians, producers, other voting members. There's going to be a lot of networking, a lot. Like I'm going to really focus on getting as much as I can from my periods in LA, because it's basically the equivalent of a massive music conference, more than, the Grammy week and the week after. During that period, I want to make sure to document, what I do. So either it's going to be somebody else, using my camera and documenting, if I'm talking or whatever. I don't know what is going to be video, but it's not going to be like me always, like every single time, talking to the phone, because it's stupid, like when I'm talking to the phone, going around, hey, I'm here and I'm doing this and that. I don't want to have to do that. I want to be focused on living my experience in the real world. But at the same time, I want to make sure that, it's documented. And whatever is documented, I'll put it out on YouTube. Why? Because actually, when I became a voting member of the Recording Academy a year ago, I discovered that there's not many videos on YouTube or people saying, how does it feel? Or what is it actually, a voting member going to the Grammys, There's some people that, some voting members, they have videos, but it's very like generic, so that nobody really knows, And the funny thing is the Recording Academy wants people to know more about, their projects, about promoting the music community, etc. So I thought I was looking for that and I couldn't find it. So I'm sure that there are new voting members that are looking for that. Maybe somebody's going to find it useful, what I did in the video, So somebody might find useful what we're just saying now, like when we're exchanging opinions about, the current situation, music or struggles or, whatever we're experiencing. You never know. Everything else, it's random. We will never know if a song will be liked by a lot of people, if people will find something valuable, or so something that it become part of their lives or not. That's completely random, because like even with artists with massive budgets, it's still a big question mark as far as how music will perform. Definitely. But
Well, that's right. You can spend a fortune on a PR company and have no results.
no, absolutely. But plus PR companies nowadays, like I think I've seen with many artists and labels, and also I have my opinion about PR companies. I think PR companies are good if you're already established because they'll help to expand whatever you have. But the reality is nobody reads music blogs. Nobody cares. Music blogs.
Right.
I mean, unless you are, like you're somebody that is goes extremely nerd about audio systems, or you're a sound engineer, okay, and then you're gonna go on blogs that do gear review, or if you're a guitar player, and you check guitar reviews, but music reviews. I mean, there's few channels on YouTube that are very successful, and they do like a lot of music reviews. How are you gonna compete with those just with a blog in words? Considering that people don't really read anymore, they want to watch videos. The only time when they read is then when they're watching a video on mute. That's why they want the
Yeah.
captions. So how are you gonna have somebody sitting through like 400 words review of an album? So a description in words of something that is sound. For people today, it's difficult, Like, I mean, the traffic to major magazines and physical magazines too. Like, I mean, if you take Rolling Stones, if you take Vogue, right? Like, Vogue should be about fashion. So why they're doing reviews about furniture, or music? Rolling Stones, it's like a lifestyle magazine. They do reviews on clothes. They talk with people that they're public figures because they know that the music audience wouldn't be enough to sell physical copies of the Rolling Stone magazine. That's the
Right.
reality. So for
Yeah.
PR.
Yeah.
But just to finish up, I would like to know more about night work
Oh,
because we didn't talk about your album.
well, about a year ago, I wrote a lot of songs in a very short amount of time. And at the same time, my old drummer from my band Wood called me up and said he just built a studio in his shed, and if I had any songs that needed drums, he would gladly play on them. And then so I said, I have just written a bunch of songs, and I sent them over to Steve on a very rudimentary click track, and he was in my old band Wood, and he played great drums. And then I did the same with the bass player, sent the songs over to James, who lives in Dublin, funnily enough.
Nice.
And he played bass on them. And then I had a bunch of other guys. It was all put together very unorganically, you might say. Normally I like to get the band in a room and play, but this was not that. But it sounds great. And I actually think it might be my strongest album to date. I've put out a lot of records over the last 15 years, and I think might be my best record. I'm very happy with it. The fans like it, and people who spend time with the record dig it. And I can play a lot of the songs live, which is a good thing for me because it fills out my repertoire. I already have a lot of songs that I've been playing for years, so it's nice when I can play new songs to the audience because they've heard all my songs many times. And it's a great record. I'm very, very happy with it.
Do you have
Check it out.
any favorite like Runaway, Breezy?
Yeah. I love the way Loving the Blue came out, which was a song about my mum. That was a very simple little song, very kind of Van Morrison-y. And I think that came out real good. That's maybe a favorite. It's an easy song for me to sing and play, so I always like that. But they all really will reach their potential. I think there's no filler on the record. They're all strong, and they all, to my ears, have all. Sometimes on a record, though rarely, I do think some of the songs maybe I should have left them off. There's not many that I can think of. There's maybe two or three that I think I should never have put that on the record. But this record, I think they're all strong, and they all were successful recordings. I'm very proud of it. It's called Night Work. It's on Spotify and available at my store, jamesmaddock.net. I have a website and a store. I'm not completely off the grid, as I might have said. You might think I was, but I'm not. But it's brand new. It came out in August. I'm very happy with it.
Nice. And I noticed that, like, the copyright line, it says songs on Avenue C. But the very first album, correct me if I'm wrong, is Sunrise on Avenue C, right? That's the one on Spotify.
My first real album was on Columbia Records, and that was with my band, which was called Wood. And you have to look separately for that on Spotify because it doesn't come up under my name, unfortunately. But it was me and it was my band, and we were called Wood, WOOD. And that song's called Songs from Stamford Hill, that album. And that was my record. That came out on Columbia Records in like 1999. And that was really my first proper album. And then I moved to New York in about 2002. And it took me about another 7 or 8 years to get to the point where I knew enough people and I'd written some songs and I had money to make the Avenue C album. So that came out in 2010. So there was a big gap between my first Wood album and the Stamford Hill, Sunrise on Avenue C album. But Sunrise on Avenue C was my first real solo album, I suppose, although the Wood album was really just my songs. I should have really called that album James Maddock album as well, but I did not for some reason.
Okay. And you said that the last album contains some of the best songs you ever written, or probably the best ones.
Best collection. Yeah, the album's very strong.
Okay. Is it because you think your songwriting style has evolved, or is it because of the topics in the songs?
I think it's simply luck that they all came together, and they all came together real quick, and I just hit on a rich. I just was productive in that. But when I don't put out records unless I'm very happy with the songs, so it's not like I'm gonna put out a record that I'm not happy with. I can't afford to do that. I rely on the fans to finance the record. All my records are fan financed, and I really take that very seriously. And I don't ask the fans for money unless I am extremely happy with what I'm actually going to use their money for. And so I think all my records are great, really. I really think they're all terrific. There may be one song here and there that I think, but that's only natural.
That's normal. Yeah, that's natural. Definitely. Yeah, they probably they capture certain points in time. And
yeah,
they're unique.
And they're good. If you listen to any of my records, I hope that that they won't disappoint. They're good.
Yeah, I only listen to Network, but I'll check to the previous ones. And I saw obviously the discography on Spotify.
There's a lot.
There's a lot, yeah. But I'm also gonna check Wood too. I'm gonna check songs from Stamford Hill.
Yeah, check that out, man. That is a beautiful record. I'm very, very proud of that record. That made me a lot of friends actually in America. So.
Nice. 99, right? It says 1999.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay, awesome. Interesting. Cool. All right, James, thank you for your time. And I'll make sure to put whatever links you want me to put in the description. And so obviously put the Spotify link, and we'll definitely keep in touch. I'm just going to click stop